this is kind of a bonus leader webinar because I first have to apologize and take full accountability that I mixed up the topics. And so I just jammed out on the topic I thought we were doing, only to find out Ashley said, you did the wrong topic. So
good thing you're just so full of information. I was like, great, that means we get to do more and take more advantage of your brilliant wealth of knowledge here, Summer.
That being said, I so apologize to whoever's listening, whoever's going to get this. I know how frustrating that can be to think you're just, joining one thing only to hear something else. So anyway, hopefully this is going to provide the content and some of the information, at least some information about, when you're repeating yourself over and over, when you don't know how to technically hold your team accountable, and you're starting to get a little grumpy and resentful. I just want to discuss some ways that over, 20 years of dentistry has taught me, there are better ways that I have found to go about creating kind of ecosystems that are conducive to not having to repeat yourself so much and not even really having to hold team members accountable. It's funny, as I was writing this up, and hopefully everybody who is listening got a copy, I truly just vomited out kind of my kind of flow of how I look at this topic. Hopefully people were able to see that. But when I was writing it out, actually, it's really reminiscent of what I'm going to be talking about at the summit. And I think this is just such an area that people get really frustrated by. And I want to first start with, there is no, unless I'm missing it, there's really no like perfection, utopic office. It's like the people in like whatever Instagram or Facebook that show all the most beautiful everything, and you're like, they've got it perfect. They don't. And neither do I. And I know some of the best. And it's funny, they've secretly behind the scenes been like, can I send somebody to your office and you can send somebody to mine and we can see, how to help each other, because people still have stuff. But what I am going to say is I have definitely found ways over the years, over the decades, to set myself up for a much better outcome. So I'll start with that and say this is not the way. This is just several ways I have found that get to that just better ecosystem, a better, more conducive environment to not repeating yourself and things like that over and over. So I'll kind of just dive in. And the first one, and I'm going to be reiterating this at the summit, is you've got to have an environment where you can create change. You've got to have an environment that is conducive. So that starts with assessing who's on the bus right now and kind of where they're at. If you're looking to hire more people, or you're thinking, hey, I know I need to get a couple people off the bus, my very first thing is I'm a maniac emphatic about who we hire, how we hire them, and how we onboard them. I will say, because people say to me often, like, well, how do you keep people motivated? And it always makes my eye kind of tweak a little bit, because I'm like, ooh, I don't keep people motivated. I don't want to have to keep people motivated. I don't want to have to, do any of that. What I really emphasize to my hiring team, and I'm going to even give you guys some of the questions, but I'm really big on, in the hiring process, start with hard questions pretty quickly and let them just talk. The more they talk, the more they're going to tell you who they are. And I'm just asking everybody to ask better questions and then actually listen to the answers. Often people aren't highly, motivated. They're not necessarily highly accountable to themselves. And that's going to show through. I mean, if they come late, that might be a first precursor, that might be a sign. And sometimes we want to be like, oh no, things happen, no big deal. They're late to their own interview. Or you told them to come prepared with something. Like, we send our core values ahead of time, and they will often say, oh shoot, I didn't get to those, or I forgot them, or whatever. That's a sign. And I get it, in this hiring market, believe you me, I'm going to say to the summit too, like, Ashley knows better than anybody. I have run half staffed for 18 months. I get it. I get wanting to hire just a warm body, but I will say asking better questions and really listening to their answers, hiring well, is step number one. So assessing who's on the bus when it comes to not repeating yourself and not having to hold people accountable constantly. It starts with who's on the bus, who needs to potentially move either to a different seat or potentially be set free to go find a different bus. And then putting ads out that attract more of the type of people you want and asking better questions as you hire. So that's actually my very first step when it comes to this. Ash, anything you want to add to that too?
No, there's the I don't know if you can hear the very loud, very cool pickup that just drove by. There's a quote by Maya Angelou, and it's when people show you who they are, believe them. That's exactly it. If I'm interviewing someone who needs to be really tech savvy and they're struggling with Zoom to do my virtual interview, listen, thank you for your time. Like I don't have time, like that's just not where we're at. So yes, I just have to, what I do on these webinars is agree with you most of the time, but yes,
Yeah.
that's the hiring thing, and trusting when someone shows you who they are is a big thing for me.
And I think often we don't want to ask these hard questions. We almost want to give them the softball so that they can like give us a okay answer and feel good about it. And what I'm really challenging, your hiring team, whoever that may be in the office, ask the hard questions now, because it will never get easier than right now. If you're having these conversations and it's hard with them right now, it never gets easier from that point. So if they're skirting the issues, if they're giving ambiguous answers, if you ask them something and they're already not accountable to that answer, you're not going to get much better. And I'm going to tell you quickly some of the questions that, and I have them here, that I know we love asking is, what have you learned about our company during your own research for this interview? They better have Googled us.
Yeah,
hey,
that's a good one.
You guys have incredible reviews. I see that you guys have multiple doctors. Your stuff looks really modern. That looks cool. That's good enough for us. At least you looked us up. Another question is, what happens? How do they react if they see a coworker around them who's consistently performing their duties incorrectly?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do there? Do they say, nothing? Or you know what, that's their business. I'll let the owner take care of it. Is it because they're going to say something? Listen to that answer. Because a lot of times, and by the way, I didn't say performs the duties badly. I just said incorrectly. Because ideally, don't we want somebody who would say, oh, I would just run over there and show them, like, oh, you must not know, do it like this. Somebody who can at least answer in that kind of frame of mind is at least an accountable person who can say, I want to just step in, and when I see something done incorrectly, I'm going to say something. Right. Do you find it frustrating when you think that there's a more efficient way of performing your job duties than you've been directed? Do you find it frustrating to have to find new efficiencies? Is that hard for you? A lot of people are not change ready. They want to get the job expectations and never have them change. Well, we all know in dentistry, somebody who tells me like, well, what do you mean? Like, you mean like maybe the job will change? Yeah, sometimes as we evolve, we find that we do things inefficiently. So we have to streamline our processes. How are you with finding new efficient ways from what you first got when you came here? We want somebody who's accountable, who can say, yeah, I think with direction, I think I'm pretty good at that. Now, granted, they may say that, they may say I'm pretty good at that and be lying, but at least you've asked the question and been able to listen for an answer. If a manager or a leader or somebody asks you, whatever you want to call them in your practices, whatever, somebody asks you to do something, a task that you've never done before, how do you feel about that? In dentistry, that happens all the time.
All the time.
This is a big one for us. If a manager, leader, doctor, somebody doesn't provide you with guidance or feedback in that day or a few days, how do you feel? Some people say, I don't need people's feedback. I'm totally fine on my own. Some people will say, hey, I'm pretty good about just doing my own thing for a while, but probably every week I'd want to at least check in. Okay, great. Tell me more about, what does a check-in look like for you? So you can just have better conversations when you ask better questions. So these are just some ones that we ask to be able to like put them into scenarios or situations instead of, non-negotiables are really important. Of course, like we do ask, but that's like Victoria, my executive assistant, emails these questions before we ever even take our time.
Right.
But, non-negotiables are super important. What hours will you work? Will you travel? We have offices, so will you travel? Non-negotiables are important. But when it comes to like really finding out, are they already self-motivated, already accountable people? Asking these types of questions kind of in our little, 20-30 minute Zoom that we'll have with them, we can hit them pretty quick. And I will tell you, we won't progress through them if, much like you, they're telling us stuff that we're like, shoot, this is a square peg. There is no way we're going to jam this into an oval hole.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just not going to fit. So I think that's kind of my very first thing is hiring people who are giving you the signs of being already that type of person. And we've all read that whole energy bus book, but they come with batteries included, we say. We're not going to have to be constantly putting new batteries in them. So that's first and foremost. And then, for those of you on DSN, Alistair did a presentation called Omission Commission, where he lays out for team members, when they start with his companies, like, this is omission, this is commission. We want to make sure that you understand the rules of the game from day one when you start here. We do the same thing, and we review with them. What does it mean to be, on the right side of this whole game and potentially on the side that's concerning? So when my universal trainer, one of the first ways we set that sense of accountability, internal drive, things like that from the get-go is she does lay out for them. She'll say, okay, in our offices, we absolutely 100%, if a mistake or something is made, we always assume benefit of the doubt. We just always assume somebody was missing something, somebody didn't understand, somebody, didn't have all the instructions, the expectations, the resources. That's omission. Something's omitted, right? Something's missing. That's 90% on us as the business owners, leaders. That's our job, is to provide you with that explanations, descriptions, like I said, tools, resources, whatever. The 10% of that, though, team member, that's on you. It's super important that you let us know if something is missing, if you don't understand, if when we explain something, you're still kind of lost, we want you to tell us. That's the part that you own of omission. That's the good side. So when mistakes are happening there, that's fine. Now, we don't want the same mistakes to happen over and over,
Right.
new team member, but new mistakes are good. We'll always give benefit of the doubt, and we'll always assume something's missing. On the other side of that, though, is, and we just have in our little onboarding packet, we have this all drawn up. On the other side of that, though, is commission. Here's the concerning part is commission is 100% on you, team member, because this is completely out of our control. This is gossiping, complaining, cell phone use, kind of throughout the day, whatever it may be in your practices where it's just not allowable cultural behavior, repeating the same mistakes over and over and over without getting clarity or help, whatever it may be. So we kind of list those out and we say, we just want to make sure you understand from the get-go the things that fall within our domain that we need to help you with, and the things that are 100% yours that, we'll be honest, we don't play around in this side. We don't mess around in the commission side, and it's super important that you know that from the get-go. Dr. Caswell is the gatekeeper of this practice, and she's pretty heck bent on guarding this place and the culture within it. So if you start to go to that side, one of the leaders is going to step in and have a discussion with you here. We just don't want that to happen at all. So is there any questions about kind of the rules of engagement from the get-go? So we lay that out in onboarding. I then revisit it about every 3 to 4 months in my team meetings. I'll go back through it again and I'll just say, hey guys, I know y'all know at refresher, sometimes I'll call out and say, what's omission? That means something's missing, or whatever my team will say. But it's a good refresher for the team. It's a good refresher even for my leaders. And even, new team members get to hear like, oh, they're serious. And then, if you're thinking to yourself, well, gosh, how do you deploy this if you've already got this team in place? You can absolutely. I mean, I had the same thing. I had a team already in place, but I wanted to make it to where I had a few on the bus that I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to step up. I completely just brought this same thing to the entire, meeting and said, moving forward, I really want to make sure all of us are on the same level of playing field. And I care about the culture and this place and where you work so much that I've got to guard it from anything on the commission side. So
Mhm.
hiring well, hiring with great questions, and then starting onboarding off with a sense of we want you to win, and this is what it looks like to win. This
Yeah.
is where we want to stay, and mistakes are good. They're great. We don't mind mistakes. This is just what it looks like to stay on the right side of them. So, anything with that though, Ashley?
I think you touched on, and we'll probably touch on a little bit later too, but the fact that you're even bringing this up to your team, like it's just it's going back to consistent training, right? Like just because you said it once doesn't mean that, it's going back, it's touching on these things, and then, not just on the omission commission, there's a lot of things that, should always be being refreshed, because that's how things stay sharp. That's how the axe
Yep.
stays sharp. It's, and so, yeah, just to add to that, I think that's a super important little tidbit you put in there just with this reference, but it applies to a lot of different things as well.
Absolutely. Well, and in that onboarding, on day one, day two, day three, that first week or two, we have really structured with um, expectations. I know we've literally said this over the last 3 years. Probably the biggest word we've used is like expectations, but we do. We have written expectations, documented expectations, you know, tons of here's what we do, but here's why we do it. And then the consequence of if we don't do this, this is what happens, new team member. We don't want you to
Mm,
have to see that consequence.
right,
Because if you fail to send a lab case, eventually you'll have to call the patient yourself and find out where to put them into the doctor's schedule. We just don't want you to have to do that. So in onboarding, we're trying to make sure that we're linking the what with the why, potential long-term consequences that we're not saying, we're not wagging our fingers at them at that point. We're just saying down the road, this is why it's so important. And we're hitting that from that very beginning with onboarding. We haven't thrown them in to one-on-one patient facing or anything like that. We're really kind of hitting the behind the scenes, what, why, expectations, what happens if we don't fulfill those. And here's the thing is we have found when we hire correctly, high accountables, highly motivated people, they love that structure. They are
yes.
so thankful. I'm speaking to one right now. They love to know how to win the game. Like, oh my
That's
gosh.
exactly it. Like, tell me what you want me to do. Yes, let me.
Yes.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, the biggest thing that I have found with, Debbie's, because people always say, like, how do you find a Debbie? I'm like, this is exactly what I did. And
Hmm.
she loved knowing, what is the expectation? What do you want from me?
Yep,
What do you want this
yep,
to look like? And I'll do it. And then she even
right,
knew if I don't do it well, no big deal at all. I'm going to come to you and we're going to work on the omission side. Something's missing. Let me help you. Um,
right, right.
and so when you combine all of that, and it's like I know people are thinking to themselves, you know, what if you don't need new team members? That's
Hmm.
great. If you have these already on the bus, awesome. You can fast forward through all of this. But there's so many people I talk to that if we're really honest with ourselves, there's somebody either in a wrong seat who maybe just needs this conversation again, or potentially ones that need to be moved out. And if we're going to hire, oh, I'm always like, this is your refresh button.
Yep.
Do it well and then onboard them well. Um, so that's kind of the very first step. Because if we've done that, then right from the start, everything's so much easier, I find. Um, but, if you're looking at your team, if your leaders here, doctors here, you've assessed it and you've said to yourself, okay, I only have one or two that aren't already batteries included type people, then I wouldn't recommend necessarily having a whole meeting on it unless you feel it's necessary. Or if you've done some of these things and you still just have one or two, you can pull those two absolutely aside, and just say, hey, I think I have completely let you down here. I'm a big fan of just, I'll always take, um, I'll always be the one to apologize first. because if they're not doing something well, that's ultimately my responsibility anyway. So I'll always
Mhm.
come to, if it was just those one or two people, I'll say, I am so sorry. I have completely failed you here. It's been a couple weeks and I've been seeing this happen and I failed to pull you aside. And I know you'd hate that, Ashley. I know you'd hate that you aren't doing this well. So let me pull you aside and help you understand again the what, the why, and the future consequence that could happen, because I just don't want to see that for you. So if it's one or two, pull them aside. If you're saying to yourself, I've got a majority of the team, or like me, you just need to have that, full on meeting, then have the full on meeting and reintroduce what you're trying to do. And I think, people are always like, well, what if it's like middle of the year and I'm trying to do it? Great, do it no time like the present, you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly.
And for me, I'm like, it will always like, I call them my reboot meetings. I've had to have those. I've had to have reboot just a department meeting even
Mhm.
because I've had it where the front office was starting to go astray. They're great people. I knew they didn't want to go astray. So I'm like, reboot, refresh, let's start over here. Um, and I think once again, it's always me standing up and saying in front of them, hey guys, I am so sorry that I can see I've let a few of these things slide. And that is absolutely my responsibility. I apologize for that. Um, Moving forward, I am excited at the thought of really re energizing our culture and getting us back to what makes us great. And that is blank, blank, blank. So let me lay back out for everybody. Let's go back through omission commission, just so that we can all make certain we understand how to talk to each other and we can stay on kind of the right side of issues and things like that. So sometimes it's just me doing that. Um, it's often, I'll be honest, it's me, if you're in a smaller practice and you have like an OM or a lead hygienist or a lead back office and an OM, sometimes it's just taking them aside and saying, hey guys, I think we've let some of the standards slip. And super important for us to kind of reiterate again omission, commission, or what are the standards mean, the what, the why, the consequence. So sometimes it's just pulling them aside, but it starts with kind of clarity of who's on the bus, what seat, and what right now are the areas that we're getting resentful about. What are the areas that are frustrating? Is it just one or two, or is it kind of permeating throughout, or is it just one department? And then, like I said, I think really making sure that we're setting that group down and make it, oh man, practice what we preach. I always say, leaders, I'm like, make it easy for them. And that has to be, I take the heat first. I am so sorry. I tell my leaders all the time, it needs to start with, dang it, I am so sorry I let you guys down. I recognize blah, 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 blah. And I teach my leaders the same thing too. Because I said, the problem is if you go to these people and you're like, guys, you've let the standards slide. This is what I'm
Yep.
seeing. It instantly, because here's the thing is some of those people may actually be batteries included. We've just let things slide. And I hate to say it, that's not necessarily their like fault, whatever. It's ours as leaders. So I'm like,
Right.
so we need to be the ones to go first. And I'm such a believer of like, if you hired these people, then they're your responsibility to
Yes.
either lovingly educate up or lovingly release to someplace they're going to do well. And so I tell my leaders, if we're having these times where we are repeating ourselves over and over and over, I say to them, oh, how wonderful. That's your little yellow flag. Like, yay, you now know. And you're going to hear me say at the summit, like, your mess is your message. I love that statement. Your mess is your
Mm.
message. Look at that. Now you know. You're repeating yourself over and over and over. It's time for either a reboot, refresh, but we got to sit down with them. Um, and once you've laid it out that clear again them for them, whatever it may be that you've been repeating yourself about, you know, lab cases aren't getting sent, claims aren't getting done right, narratives aren't getting in, how you want. If you go back through this, they really understand the what, the why, and then the future consequence. It gets so much easier at this point. But I will say, like, I'm assuming everybody listening is some sort of leader. It's got to start with us. And it's got to be us taking, like I said, the heat first. Of I'm so sorry I let you guys down. I know you never want to let the standards slide. Because Ashley, you care so much about the standards, and I apologize that I failed to actually guide you back towards what this is and why we do it. So That's what this meeting is going to be about. If you were in those shoes, that feels so much less defensive in my mind than, Ashley, I don't know what's been going on, but this is really getting messy and this is looking really sloppy and I'm getting frustrated and the patients are too. That kind of puts people immediately on their feet.
Totally.
So so that's really kind of my favorite way to hire well, onboard well, and then reinstate what the standards are with omission commission in whatever capacity is needed, depending on who's on the bus, who's not on the bus, and the standards that need to be re-implemented. So
I love that. And I got like that little piece again of the, you take accountability first. Everything happening, in your business, in your life is your fault. So, how, your team is working together, how it's your fault, good or bad. And so anytime you can, like vulnerability is a superpower, right? So anytime too, you could be like, man, I messed up here. This is my bad. If you can put yourself in that like vulnerable state of this is my bad, I messed up. Like most of the time your team isn't going to be like, yeah, you did. Like,
right,
they're going to be like, oh, all right.
right.
So they're not going to be on the defense. They're going to be wanting to make the change because you are being vulnerable and not coming on the defense to them, because that's going to, if you're aggressive to them, they're going to be on the defense. So you got to, that vulnerability piece and that accountability is so huge and makes just the absolute world of difference, and can be challenging sometimes because sometimes it's, it's very reactionary to be like, hey, this is what's happening versus man, I messed up. What did I do here? What did I miss here that is causing this issue? So
Yeah.
love that piece as well.
Well, and what's amazing is, and I'm not going to go super deep into this, but
That's another webinar.
yeah, we've had it before actually. But whenever I want to react like that, there's something behind why I want to react like that. And when instead I just take a pause, I take a beat, and I literally just look at that person and think to myself, I hired this person, and there's no way that they are wanting to make everybody's life terrible. They're not. They're not wanting that.
Right.
And so when I can just take a breath, take a pause, because here's the thing is, and I'm gonna be saying a lot of this at Summit, but we don't make good decisions. We don't have good conversations from that place. We have reactionary, intimidating, scary conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing is what I found, and I can only speak for myself, but as leaders in the practice, we are the standard holders, we are the culture holders, but we are the ones that they're going to emulate for making a mistake. And that's a really key piece is I have to teach my own leaders, how do we make mistakes and grow from them? Because for people, unfortunately, this is what I'm saying is they see to themselves, a lot of times something will happen, a mistake. It's incredible the internal dialogue that happens quickly when we aren't even seeing it. If that person grew up in a household where making mistakes makes them unlovable, they don't get attention, they are considered bad, making mistakes is scary.
Mm-hmm.
I have one DA in my whole career practically that she would make a mistake and be like, gosh, darn it, Dr. Castle, I am so sorry I did this and I won't do that again because here's what I'm going to do. You tell me how many times that happens. Most
right.
people, they make a mistake. And the first thing I will tell you, the biggest thing I usually hear is defensiveness. People freak out and want to defend why. And my biggest thing is if I don't want to keep repeating myself over and over, then I've got to help them figure out what do we do with that. It's just feedback and it's just information. And the best thing I can do myself and teach my leaders is we own those mistakes. Because here's the thing is, I don't even like the word mistake. I want to call it something else, to be honest, opportunity. Because honestly, that's all it ever is an opportunity. Cool. I am so glad that happened. Because here's what I found out. Here's what I won't do again. Great. We just got a new chance to make something even better and improve it. And so I tell my leaders, when something you do doesn't work, we're the first ones in those meetings in front of 30 people to say, hey, shoot, you know what? I tried this. Guys, it didn't work. I just had to do it not that long ago. Guys, I tried this. It did not go well, and I apologize. Thank you for hanging in with me, I said. I really appreciate you guys' support. I'm going to tweak it. change it, and this is what it's going to look like moving forward. Thank you so much for that. Because that's exactly, I'm teaching them, what do you do when you get that feedback, that mistake
Right.
feedback? And it's, we totally own it because it's not scary to do so. I'm not going to be ridiculed. I'm not going to be outcast. I'm not going to have people in the corner talking about me. Oh, all of that makes my heart sad. um, I'm going to make that little whoopsie or whatever, that opportunity
Mhm.
happen, and then I'm going to learn from it. If I create an environment where there's tons of reaction towards those, people are going to start hiding them. And here's the thing is if you think you're repeating yourself a lot now, I hate to tell you, you don't want to know what's going on that is probably trying to be covered up because people are scared. And so,
Right.
for me, it's so important, because I mean, everybody's been on the other side of feeling that sense of shame or guilt, right? Nobody does well in that. And it makes you either defensive or it makes people actually end up freezing. Have you seen
Mhm.
those people where they just freeze?
Yes.
They
Shut
freeze,
down.
shut
Yep.
down, and they're no longer listening. Either way
Right.
doesn't help me. So
Right.
if we want to look from a complete efficacy standpoint, me being reactionary, my leaders being reactionary to those kind of things, shaming them, wagging their finger, do you know what you did? It's just going to make it worse. And so that's where I'm like, when you're in those moments and you're finding yourself needing to repeat or what have you, do we want to be efficient and efficacious? If we do, then how we approach it is going to be everything. Because we're either going to make this an opportunity for them or something that feels scary and they'll want to hide future mistakes. So that's the next thing. If I don't want to repeat myself over and over, how do I create a safe environment where when they make mistakes, they not only learn, but better things happen on the other side of it?
Right.
So that's my second point to it is um, we've got to have a safe culture where people feel okay being on the omission side. If we make it
Yeah.
scary to be on the omission side, then they're like, I don't know how to play the game then.
Mhm.
So I think that's the second part of it that I would say. We shorten that loop so fast in our offices. We joke with them. You remember how we said in the interview process, we love quick feedback. We're going to give it as quickly as possible because we want you to grow and progress and hit your 30, 60, 90s expectations as fast as possible. And we're going to be with you the whole way, but we want to let you know we'll be giving feedback quickly and consistently. Um, and then we do just that. Everything we say we're going to do, we then do.
Right.
Because if Ashley, a high accountable, highly motivated person, is in week 3, is making a mistake, Julie sees it, and she kind of is like, I don't have time or I don't want to say anything right now. Ashley has no idea. She's going to keep making that same mistake. It's going to keep getting a little more off, off path, a little bit more off and off path. Well, then if Julie comes and says, oh, hey, shoot, I've been seeing that you were doing that. We really need you to do this. Well, Ashley's left sitting there thinking, have you been seeing me do this the whole time?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you've just been letting, like, they feel high accountables feel bad about that.
Mhm.
They feel terrible that they've been making this mistake. So Julie's going to intervene as quickly as possible. Sometimes it can't be right in the moment, but by the end of the day, hey, I noticed you did this. You had no idea the why behind that. I obviously didn't make it very clear. So let me tell you, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And I don't want that for you. So we do
Mhm.
it like this to avert all that pain and headache down the road. Does that make sense, Ashley? And Ashley can say, oh, yes. And it's, quick feedback kind of in that moment versus waiting and hoping somebody else is going to say it down the line. Because high
Right.
accountables, if you hired that, that makes them, they
Feel
feel
like
really
failures.
uncomfortable. Yep. They
Yeah.
feel really uncomfortable with it. I have found. So, I think that's something that I will say has been really big for us too, is quick, kind of instantaneous feedback. Not to the point of over the top, every single but if it's the standard and they're moving away from it, we can let them explore and play as long as the standards hit, but we can't let them not have the standard hit. So we'll help them through that. So our onboarding process is pretty slow, to be honest. That's why I said they're not patient facing for a while. because we want them
Mhm.
to get to kind of play in the sandbox for a while, you know, play with things, play with open dental, play with treatment plans, whatever it may be, before we, you know, put them in front of patients. Because that's a lot of times our reactions are usually heightened because not only did it happen, but we've now let patients down.
Right.
Or God forbid, you know, if it's an OM, they've let the patient down, they're going to have to redo the work and they have to tell the doctor. So,
Right.
so then, you know, we get that heightened response. And I'm like, I understand. So if we can actually just start back from as they're just, you know, starting, giving that feedback quicker, not putting them patient facing quite so quickly, sometimes we just can catch those things. But regardless, there's going to be some things you are going to have to repeat over and over. Some standards you will have to repeat until they're consistently done efficiently. And we all know that. It's just if you're having to repeat the exact same thing over and over,
Yeah.
it may be time to have a different conversation. But if it's a similar thing but a different circumstance, you may need to repeat yourself. Um, so I'll stop there and kind of check in. Ashley.
No, I think that the onboarding thing, and we've done, if you guys haven't seen our full onboarding series of webinars, like when Summer says her onboarding is slow, it is, but it's just laying that foundation. Like, would you rather start from a shaky foundation, or lay it down solid in the beginning? Here's the expectations, here's what we expect, omission commission wise. It takes more time that way for sure, but that's the investment that you're making to really make sure that this person is a success within your office.
Yeah, for sure. And I get it. That's why I mean I am in everybody's shoes where, you know, they're saying to themselves, like, you don't understand, like, we're so short staffed. And I'm like,
Oh
I
no,
know
I
it.
do.
Huh,
Yeah.
my heart hurts for everybody because I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it. But even with that, I'm like, the price I pay is so much higher if I hire the wrong fit and let them go for 4 or 5, 6 months because they're destroying culture behind the scenes. They are potentially creating tons more work. We've just found it easier, you know, to kind of reiterate, hire better with some of those questions, find high accountables, highly motivated people. Onboard from day one with this is the rules of engagement. We love mistakes. We just want to stay on the correct side of it, omission side. That's fine. We explain omission, commission. And then just like everybody, you know, we have an online training curriculum we use for front office positions. We always have, you know, a universal trainer who will sit and make sure that everybody gets the same baseline foundation. Whether you're a doctor or a sterile tech or a hygienist, they're all going to get the same level of everything that I've just said. Um, and then we hold true to, like I said, week by week, we are checking in constantly. We are giving feedback constantly. We're asking for feedback constantly. I have one team member in the office that, you know, her job as a universal trainer is she checks in, you know, once that team member has moved to their department, she checks in once a month with them and goes to a lunch and just sits with them and says, how has your training been? What could we have done better? What are you finding you're still struggling with? Just in case there's something that the departmental trainer, you know, missed. Um, so we really want to onboard in a slow, methodical way to make sure that they're hitting the standards. Sometimes some people need to be moved off the bus if we've had these conversations, sometimes a different seat. Um, and sometimes it's we've just got to have that reboot meeting. But what I will say with that is it's always going to be myself or my leaders owning everything. It's always going to us saying we've let you guys down. We'll apologize that the standards have been, you know, let down. But with that, we're excited to bring the standards back up, and this is what it's going to look like. And sometimes, like I said, I've had to go department by department and spend the time and energy going back through. Here's why we have these standards. Just for reference, everybody, my lead DA, she went back through with all of the dental assistants on Thursday afternoon. She sat with them for 3 hours and went back through the what, the why, and the consequence of a whole bunch of stuff. Because she was like, things were just starting to fall through the cracks. Guys, they're great people. That's just sometimes what happens. So she had to re-hit that, you know, that reboot button with them, revisit all of that and what's going to happen in the future, consequence wise, that she doesn't want them to have to face. She wants to make certain that they don't have to face those consequences. And so sometimes we have to do that. But I think it does stem from owners, leaders, whoever is going to be, speaking to the team members when it comes to accountability. They have to be coming from the right place. They have to come from a place of neutrality and always thinking to themselves, benefit of the doubt with that person. If you can have leaders and people who can actually approach team members like that, accountability also gets easier because we lower their defensiveness. They actually hear what you're saying versus freezing, disassociating, and not listening, or thinking to themselves, I'm scared as heck. How do I hide this from them in the future? So how we approach these things can make it to where we don't repeat ourselves. And the cool thing is even if the standards start to fail, or start to fall, you have to have that reboot meeting. You're not resentful, but you are saying to yourself, as leaders, I did set the standard. I got to hold them to that. I heard from Alistair, and I love this. It's we're hard on the work, easy on the people. I couldn't agree more. And that's how I feel, is like, dang it, we got to be hard on the standards, guys. We know we want this. If I was talking to you, Ashley, that's exactly what I'd say, because I do know it's true. I'm like, you want this to be great just like I do. I know that. And I know that you didn't want that to fail. I know it because I really mean that. I know that. And so with that, how do we ensure that we get that standard back up? And I'm going to need your help. And those make it to where you don't have to be resentful when you're doing it. And sometimes I have found I lovingly dismiss people, and it's funny, we're both sad. I'm sad because I love the person, but they're sad too because they know they can't hold those standards. It's just not the right fit for them. And that's okay too. The thing that I personally can't allow happening in my practices is, I don't want anybody to ever end up in my office and me say the words, I've heard that you're doing this, this, and this. It sounds like you're really messing up here. For me, I just put myself in that person's shoes and I would instantly stop listening and think, who's been saying that? Who's been saying that about me? Like, what? And I would be feeling horrible and thinking, who's been talking about me? And you put that in a group of women, and often that can just lead to very unsafe environments, is what I found over decades of working with lots of women. And so for me, it's like, I want, when they come into my office, they say to me, I know Brittany already pulled me aside. She told me this. She said this. And then maybe I can have a similar conversation, but it's not a surprise. And when I have to have those conversations, because we've already had the commission conversation or Brittany's had the commission conversation, I'll look at them and say, I love you, Sydney. I love you so much. And I know that you can hit these marks. I know you can hit these standards, but gosh darn it, I'm concerned. I'm worried, and I'm worried for you because I know this is not how you want to show up. So if you're in my shoes, Sydney, tell me what you do. And it's funny because, by the way, this all happened. Brittany did talk to Sydney. Sydney did say to me as she was crying, I would fire me. Ooh. And I was like, I'm going to sleep on this and I'm going to think about what needs to happen. And when I came back the next day, I came back with, this is what it's going to need to look like. This is my integrity on the line, and it's your integrity on the line, Sydney. For both our sakes, go out there and show them what you can do. Because here's the thing I will tell you, Sydney, is I won't be having this conversation again.
Yep.
And she went, yes, I know. She went out there, and for the remainder of the months that she was here till she moved for Texas, she was great. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes I really can have that level of conversation after my leaders have absolutely done their part. There's no surprises in here. And they've left and they continued that behavior. Well, then it's still easy when they come back in. Shoot, Sydney, I know. And no, I mean, literally, they just are like, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally was on the commission side. Yep. And I'm like, I wish you the absolute best, nothing but love in my heart. I wish you the best career, wherever that may be. and it's so easy. But when I do this process, starting at hiring, moving through onboarding, really working on feedback during the whole entire course, working with my leaders to give good feedback, constructive feedback from a place of neutrality, efficacy, and wanting to help that person, it creates this lovely little safe environment where we may have to repeat once in a while, but not nearly as much. Um, and people want to get better. They don't make the same mistakes. They make different ones, which is good. That's fine. Then we learn new things. So I would say for me, that's really, kind of what I have used through the years to create an ability to not have to hold people accountable so often and repeat quite so much. So anything, Ashley, though, that I miss that you can.
I think the biggest theme here, right, is consistency. It's all about consistency. It was consistency from the hiring process to the onboarding process to, monthly check-ins to group, trainings. It's consistency, and it's just about not letting those things slip. But you just can't. Like, it might seem kind of exhausting. I mean, business ownership is exhausting anyway. But by not letting those things slip and just holding that consistency, holding yourself accountable to that consistency, you're going to set a better standard for your team. I think that's the biggest takeaway I got from this and from what you're saying is just, it's all about consistency.
It is absolutely. And actually, I love that. I wouldn't have put it all together like that, but it is. It's always intentionality and consistency.
Mhm.
And it's tiring sometimes because you do want to just sit in your office, shut the door, and be like, what the heck?
I already told them.
But truly, I'm like, my mess is my message. Like I said, you're going to hear me say it at Summit, but it is. I'm like, my mess is my message. I did something that I've got to go, own up to. And like I said, create an environment where they're going to learn to make mistakes and get better from them versus anything else so that I don't have to repeat myself. So.
Yep.
So
Love
hopefully that was helpful and worth everybody's extra
Yes.
bonus time. And yes, and everybody got kind of some of the handouts, and I'm sure you put stuff on the webinar as well, little attachments or whatever. But I'm grateful for everybody coming back. And like I said, I apologize. I do take full ownership that I messed up the topics, and I'm sorry. So.
Look at that accountability. See, Summers, this is just proof of Summers' accountability.
Oh gosh, always, because I did. I told Ashley, I was like, don't apologize for me. It's me. I did it.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Summer. Truly appreciate it. This was fantastic info. Yeah, everyone will be getting it inside of DSN. And
Awesome.
yeah, we're coming back later this month because this was our bonus webinar. We'll be back later this month after the Dental Success Summit. If you haven't registered, your time is running out, man. We're excited to see so many people in San Antonio. It's going to be a good one.
Did you get your denim and your diamonds?
Yes, I did. Just you wait. Just you wait.
I can't wait. Mine still hasn't come in, so I don't know what I'm going to be wearing.
Gotcha. Mine's very fun, I will say. Yes, I'm having a fun time with it.
Good for you. I'm like, send me a picture so I know how stupid I can get. So
love it, love it. All right, thank you, Summer. We'll see you soon. And yeah, anything to wrap it up?
No, I love it. Consistency and intentionality whole way through will create a team where you don't have to repeat yourself and you hopefully don't get quite so resentful.
Perfect. Love it so much. Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.